You ready for another quick draw? Let's do it. Thank you for joining me again. Where we last left off, I was demonstrating how I color page 29 of the Raising Dragons graphic novel. Now we will be doing the last part, which is adding the shadows, the highlights, the colored lines, and any other miscellaneous thing that would finish the page. Like my previous quick draw, for this stage I used primarily the magic wand tool, the polygon lasso tool, and since we're adding shadows, I used the gradient tool as well. The simplest way to describe my process would be to create a new layer on top of the colored layer. The colors are of course just single color only, but the new layer on top will be with an opacity of 50%, typically darker colors, so that they overlay on top, creating a darker color, the shadows. If I'm really in a hurry, I would just use a simple black to create the shadow, and of course black at 50% opacity is more of like a dark gray, which will turn a green into a dark green, red into a dark red, so on and so forth. What I really like to do is I like to use the gradient tool. So when I have my selection of the shadow area, which I make by selecting the single color with the magic wand, then with the polygon lasso tool I pretty much just cut out the pieces that I don't want to have shadow. And these would be the light areas. In this case, the light source is coming from the left, so then all the shadows will be on the right. So I cut out my pieces, make sure that they're all facing left, and the remaining parts should be primarily on the right side. Then I take the gradient tool and I just drag across so that the darkest is on the right, the lightest is on the left, and you get that nice faded effect. That's why I like gradients so much. It makes the shadows much softer, more pleasant on the eyes. Alright, I had to borrow the color from Bonnie's highlights from one of the previous pages. Consistency is very important, and I don't want her highlights to be different color every time. Her highlights are relatively simple, they're just light yellow lines. Other than the fact that there's a light source on the left, shadows on the right, there's really no other rhyme or reason to how I create my shapes. I know you can probably study and read books on how to do it correctly, but I kind of just make it up as I go, hope that it looks good. That's the honest truth. And so here the noses have a darker shadow than the rest of the face, to give a bit more of a depth, make it look like it pops out more. I like to work with one color group at a time. So, for instance, I like to select all of the skin, shade that, before moving on to, say, the hair or the shirts or anything else. All of the colors are on a single layer. All of these shadow gradients are on another layer as well. I know some artists who tend to create a new layer for every color group. So all the reds on one, all the blues on another, so on and so forth. I've tried that. It's much too complicated, too many layers. I lose track. So I like to keep all my colors and all my shadows on their own respective layers. And the reason that I keep my colors on a separate layer is because I use them to select the area. Because it's a single color, I can use a magic wand. If I try using a magic wand on the shading layer, because there are gradients and different degrees of that color, the magic wand isn't able to select the entire area correctly. You know, it'll just grab the little bit that you select. So why that's so helpful is because even after I make my shadows, I can still go back and select the entire area, for instance, the all of Billy's shirt, and I can make adjustments on whatever layer I like. If I have my selection, then I can pretty much change it as I need to. With the gradient, sometimes it doesn't darken it up, so I play around with it. Now with Bonnie's wings and with human skin, the color I use for the gradient for the shadows is a dark red as opposed to black. If I use black, it makes the skin look kind of deathly, and I don't want my characters to look like zombies, so I use a red. For everything else, black will make the appropriate darker shadows. Compared to everything else, the inking, the penciling, even the flat colors, this stage of the process does take the most time. In this video, I will only be shading this first panel, which will take out the entirety. So if you consider that I have 3 other panels to shade, this entire process easily has taken 3 to 4 hours, which is about twice as long as it would take any other single stage of the process. Although I tend to make wrinkles and shapes to my drawings with the lines, I also try to give additional depth to my areas by creating more shapes with just the shadows, as you can tell in Billy's paints. What I'm doing here now is selecting the areas, the black lines. Now, I'm working with the lines here, so this is not the color layer. Selecting the black lines within an area, so the skin for instance, and I'm going to be changing it so that it's not black, but instead maybe more of a skin tone. It's still dark enough where you can tell it's a line, but that way it's a little softer. And, you know, her nose isn't black, for instance. It's just more of a dark, rosy peach. I do that for pretty much every major area. The pants, the shirts. And like I said before, I only select within that group's line work. I leave the outlines black. I don't always do this for all my drawings, but when I want it to look good, I put in that little extra effort. It does take more time though. For those of you who work with digital illustrations, it's primarily cartoons, comic book illustrations, I highly recommend you give it a try. Coloring the line work can be very, very nice. It can also be overdone or misused, so try to be subtle with it. That's my recommendation. The nostrils have to be a little darker. So what I do is I use the polygon lasso tool. I select the area inside the black lines on the edges. Then I use the magic wand tool to deselect the transparent area, which therefore, by process of elimination, only gives you the lines inside the selection minus the transparency. And that's how I select the inside lines and keeping the rest intact. When I work on panels, I usually do the people first. They're the most fun to color, to draw. And then I save the background for later. So now it's time for the clouds. Okay, so this part is the sky. Big gradient. Darks on the top, lights on the bottom. Change my brush size. Now this is a soft brush, an airbrush. And I just go at it, start adding some fluff to the clouds, add some color. Again, this isn't the most realistic cloud rendering ever, but for a comic book, I think it's appropriate. You know, you just believe it. Use your imagination. These are clouds. I'm really just winging it here, really. Thanks to the pressure sensitivity of my tablet, my strokes can become thin or thick, light and dark, making it very soft as opposed to the dark, harsh, solid lines that the shadows have on the characters. So there's a contrast there. I use the undo button a lot, but it happens so quickly you might not even notice it. I also color the lines on the clouds too. You know, if you have big solid black lines, it might really stand out. Having colored lines in the background is a very good way to make it look like it's in the background and not the focus, not the foreground. So this panel is almost done. I'm adding a focus blur, which blurs the edges and it leaves the center unblurred, which gives the effect of motion, like it's popping out at you. That's it, page 29 of the Raising Dragons graphic novel, panel 1 finished. And here's the entire page. Like I mentioned before, it took way too long to shade every panel for one video, so I just gave you a preview of the first panel. There it all is, using the same technique throughout every panel, and there you have the finished page. Thanks for watching this session of QuickDraw. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please watch my other QuickDraw sessions, inking and coloring the previous page. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos. Comment if you have any requests or questions. If you're on Google+, please add me to your circles. I'd love to interact with you and get to know you. If you want to see more of my digital artwork or read my blog, please visit my website. Alright, I'll see you next time.